Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Deja Vu Survival, where we look at an old world with new eyes. My name is Glitch. Today, we are going to start the process of turning our local village into a trading center. But we're starting out here in the desert because I want to share an awesome discovery that I made between episodes. You see, one of the interesting aspects of replaying an old world seed is that sometimes you find good things that have been sitting right under your nose. A couple of episodes back, we visited the Desert Temple, which is just on the other side of this large hill. When I first came there, I originally, in my first survival world, came at it from a different direction. In fact, the closest village to me was actually generated over in that direction rather than over in this direction where our new village is. So for that reason, I would generally speaking go around the other side of this hill rather than going through this part of the desert. And because of where the village was, I rarely came to this area of the desert at all, aside from possibly riding through it on the way to somewhere else. Now, that is going to change, however, because while I was getting ready for this episode, I decided to come over here to harvest some more sand, since some of the farms I want to look at building in the village take glass. And I came over here, and while I was digging, I kept hearing skeletons, like a lot of skeletons. So I started digging around, and I found a dungeon. Now, if we come over here, let's go ahead and I found the entrance to the cave and already secured it. But dungeons have been in the game since the pre-alpha days of Minecraft, as in the InfDev version of the game. Well, they generate randomly and there are three types. There's a zombie dungeon, a spider dungeon, and a skeleton dungeon. Of those, I think the skeleton dungeon is the most valuable because of the fact that it can be turned into a bone meal factory as well as a decent source of XP. Now, they also generate with 1 to 2 loot chests, which I have left alone up until this point, because as I took care of these, because if you light them up, they will deactivate. But when I dealt with this, there were more skeletons, and if you look towards the back of the cave, anytime you find cobblestone or mossy cobblestone that you didn't put there, you have probably found a dungeon. But as I came back and fought my way back in through more skeletons, I found we have not one, but 2 spawners. So let's take a quick look at the loot. And we get some bread, some gunpowder is good, bones, name tags, and a golden apple. Now, it's not the enchanted golden apple, but still, those are a really good thing to have. And over here, we have some gold, some zombie flesh, and more saddles, and my favorite redstone, and even an enchanted book. And if we look down here, these are actually the original way in the early game, and some more name tags, and a little more gunpowder. It's funny because in the original versions of the game, the only place you could find the enchanted golden apple was in some form of a dungeon. But I am super excited to find these things because of the fact that they are so close to home, and I cannot believe that I have walked past these things for so long. For now, I think it's time to secure our find and make a plan to come back in the next episode or two. I would try to tackle that today, but I need to do some testing in a creative world first. Since the spawners are roughly 13 blocks apart if my math is correct, and that means that I can possibly have both of them running at once, but it may produce a few challenges to get the water streams in, to get the skeletons from a spawning chamber into somewhere where I can dispatch them safely. That being said, rather than risk a valuable find, I want to do my homework first. So I think I'm going to grab the loot and run it home, and I'll meet you back at the village. Now that the loot is tucked away in the storeroom and the treasure vault, let's go ahead and get started on our village work. So a few episodes ago, I took the time to set up a basic perimeter wall around our village, and Off camera, I took some time to change the layout of the wall. I also decided to change houses. I was staying in that house over there, but I noticed that there was a little cottage back here towards the back that all of the villagers seemed to ignore. And over here, every time I went to sleep, I would wake up to a villager staring in the window at me, which, to be honest, was kind of creepy. So I decided to move over here and also to expand the house out a good bit. You can still see the shell of the small cottage, but I expanded it to give me a little more room to work with and also to store a few of my things. Now, the plan for today is to get this village prepped to be a trading center. But I'm considering a slightly different approach to what I've seen on other playthroughs. For example, many servers, like this Java server that I play on, use a more industrial approach to trading. And often you'll find a setup where you have a villager breeder, and then the villagers are sent into booths with minecarts and assigned professions based on the wants or needs of the server mates. Now, I want to be clear. I am not knocking this kind of setup. In fact, it's preferable on a server where you have a bunch of people accessing the same villager trades at the same time, or often right after one another. But since this is a single player world, I feel like I have a little more freedom to experiment and develop almost a lore to this world. Plus, since I'm the only one working with the villagers, I will need to do all of the profession assigning and leveling myself. So, part of me wants to try the challenge of making this village into an actual community, giving the villagers homes and possibly even setting up a section of the village based on the professions of the villagers that live there. And maybe even try some different styles for each area. So that does mean that this project will come together over time rather than in a single episode. Especially because, as I've said before, Bedrock villager mechanics can be a little on the finicky side. Granted, there may come a time where I need to look at making a big trading hall because there are just too many villagers for me to manage, and it will just make this, my idea, kind of untenable. But I want to give it a go and see what happens. So let's get started, shall we? Now, the first thing you want to consider when you're working on a village is you want to consider defense. Now, the wall around the village, first off, I put the wall around the village, and a copious amount of torch spam that's a good start. But also, you do want to remember that with your villagers, all of your villagers will have a period of time where they are just supposed to, within their AI, they're scheduled to, in essence, wander around. And that means they can also possibly wander outside of the confines of your village. And the one problem is they sometimes will seem to have trouble pathfinding back into the village. It's almost like they get lost in the dark. So, one thing with your wall is to have some kind of gate that requires player interaction. And you know what? This will be a whole lot easier if we do this in the daytime. So, since the sun is going down and the villagers are going to sleep, I'm going to run back to my house and we'll continue this in the morning. I'll be right back. There we are. Now that we're back fresh in the morning, so what I started to say was the fact that you want to make sure that you have some kind of entrance to your village that requires player interaction. Now, you can accomplish this with basic fence gates because a villager does not have the ability to open gates or even trapdoors within their AI package. But you can also create a gatehouse with iron doors, or since iron doors require redstone to operate. Off camera, I actually took some time and just had some fun setting up kind of a redstone gatehouse. The redstone on it is relatively simple, and I do have a tutorial for it. If you are interested in building one of these for yourself, the link for it will be in the description down below. But basically, all this does is has a button that you can just press and the gate opens, and then you press and the gate closes. There's another button on the other side, and also you can look out through here to kind of get a gander of what's going on. I will warn you that though these are transparent blocks, a creeper, if it sees you on the other side, will aggro, so just be cautious still as you're leaving. Um, you also need to, with your wall, look for any low points where a mob that can fire a projectile, like a skeleton or a pillager, can fire over. So you want to make sure to watch for your high ground. Now, once your perimeter is secure, you also want to take some time to run around and light up your caves. Now, you also want to make sure, as you're doing that, to just pay attention to your terrain. Because, for example, with the caves, I actually found one that I kept hearing zombie noises underneath this animal pen, and it turned out there was a cave that ran directly under it. So now that that's lit up, everything should be quiet. But you also want to look out for your terrain in the fact that if there is an area that is too close to your wall, like this corner over here, I had to knock back a good bit. Because, for example, in a pillager raid, if a ravager, which is quite a large mob, comes down that hill, he could feasibly walk right over the terrain into the village if it is too close. But once you've secured your perimeter, and you've lit up the caves to basically keep your villagers safe, it's time to prepare your wares for sale. Now, in truth, almost all villager types have something in their first trade that is farmable to some degree. But personally, I think that farmers are the best because you can use automated or semi-automated farms for a lot of their trades. So your first step is to assess what kind of villagers you have to start with. You want to break any villager profession blocks you don't want. For example, when I first arrived in this village, there was a brewing stand and also a couple of looms in this house over here. So what I did was I broke those and crafted up a couple of extra composters. Because then the villagers all, except for Dewey, the villagers all chose to be farmers. Now, I've already done some trading with these guys, and as you can see, he's already at diamond level. But, oh, excuse me, you heading to town? You heading to the center? Is it that time of day already? My goodness. I've already done some trading with these, but I can live with having 4 farmers to get us going. Because farmers will have as their base trades, usually, carrots or potatoes, wheat, or beetroot. That's in the level 1 trades, and they'll usually sell bread back to you, which is actually kind of useful for when you want to start villager breeding. So an automated crop farm would be good to set up. Now, before we go further, I do think it's best to stop and say that we are going to look at quite a few Redstone designs in this episode. Some of them are my designs, and some of them are from other YouTubers. So in the interest of time, I have included all of the references and links in the description below, and though I will point out where the design comes from, this will serve as a blanket notice for where to find out more information rather than telling you to check the description after every single farm. That being said, another good farm to have, especially when you have this many farmers, is a pumpkin and melon farm, because as you can see, the pumpkins and melons serve as their tier 2 and tier 3 trade, and actually for all of these farmers, each one of them has that. Beyond the farmers, I usually like to have a few shepherds around, because wool is relatively easy to farm and is sometimes useful as building block. Last up, because I plan on having a few librarians, I want to have a good sugarcane farm. Because since paper is one of their base trades, it will be a good source of both emeralds and also leveling them up so that I can get to higher tier trades with them. For right now, since we just have our farmers and our librarians at this time, I'm going to start there, which means I've got a bit of work to do to set up all of these farms. So I think the best way to do that is in the form of a first person time lapse. So while I do that, please enjoy a little music from the YouTube audio library. Let's get started. And we're back. Now that we have all the farms in place, let's go ahead and take a look at what will hopefully soon be the Redstone Barn. Originally, my idea was to build up a really nice looking barn and to make this look all pretty. I ran into the slight challenge that I got into my head that red nether bricks would look really good as a barn. And this was one of those cases where my idea kind of outpaced what I have available. Because let me tell you, Netherwart is the slowest growing block in this game ever. I AFK'd for at least 2 hours and got maybe a dozen. So I think the actual build for the barn is going to wind up being done more off camera than anything else. That being said, as it starts to rain, I went ahead and set up a pumpkin and melon farm, and I went ahead and used my own design. This is the one that I made for early game, and it works pretty well. Although, since we did find some melon seeds in the village over on the other side of the savannah, that gives us the chance to have both pumpkins and melons, and will hopefully increase the amount of emeralds we can earn. Then on the side here, we have a multi-crop farm by Silent Whisperer. It works on the principle that each one of these dispensers is filled with bone meal, and I'm just going to go ahead and grab... Oh, let's grab... Seriously? Thunder? No, I think that was just... I think it was just one of the ambient cave sounds that they added in for even when you're not in a cave. Anyways, as I was saying, go ahead and grab maybe some carrots. And the way this works is you click the lever and then it will move the piece of dirt up and down, bone mealing it as we go. So let's go ahead and do this. And then you just, it's a little bit of a trick, but you just start, oops. You basically start, okay. That's right. And you can see that the carrots are actually quickly increasing because it's bone mealing on both ends. Let's go ahead and shut that off for now. And I forgot it seems to work best to crouch on that thing. We'll go ahead and put those away for now. Next up, around the back here, we have a sugarcane farm. I originally was going to go with one of the early game versions, but I decided to forego that because this is Bedrock Edition, and because we can bone meal sugarcane, I used my compact sugarcane farm because though it will work passively, since we do have a little bit of bone meal here in the dispenser, we can go ahead and flick the switch, and it will just start to produce sugarcane like crazy, and then drop it down into our input chest. Last but not least, one of the other things that the devs have actually removed from Java Edition, but is still a part of Bedrock Edition, is that farmers, as their top tier trade, will trade 1 stack of eggs for an emerald. So in this case, a chicken farm is actually a very useful thing, and all this is a bunch of hoppers linked into a chest, and our chickens are doing just laying eggs, and eventually they would fill this. Now, unfortunately, it looks like our villagers have all gone inside. I originally was also going to go ahead and place in a farmhouse over in this area. Again, I ran into the problem with the nether warts. But I'm also decided to put off building a farmhouse for our villagers. I want to keep them in a relatively confined space, and the reason for that is that way they are always close to their workstations, because the best time to trade with them is when they come to their workstations. And so for that reason, I think I'm going to locate that over here, but I'm also working on research to see if I can find a compact villager breeder that works somewhere close by. I know that that's been an issue in previous versions, but I want to give it a go. I think I'm going to go to sleep. There we go. That should get rid of that rain as well. There, clear skies. All right. Now, so I think what we're going to do is eventually probably move our farmer villagers either down here or closer up there. I do have one of them that is only the lowest level, and I don't want to lose his trade. So, and actually, you can see that they're at present, since I just moved these, they're having a little trouble pathfinding to their workstations. But let's go ahead and thank you very much. I'll take an emerald. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and do some more trading with these guys before I try and move them again. See if I can get all 4 of them up to diamond level, because of the fact that I also think that it's going to be necessary for us to get them fully leveled up, and then hopefully 2 of these guys will be the first in the villager breeder. Now, as much as I hate to say it, to get a villager breeder going, I am going to need some more stuff. Specifically, I'm going to need more carrots or potatoes or bread to feed to the villagers so they will start breeding. And to be honest, the little demonstration of the farms has pretty much burned up every amount of bone meal from every bone I have collected thus far here in Deja Vu Survival. So next time, we are going to set up a bone meal factory using the double skeleton spawner, and hopefully add a few new faces to our little village here in the Hollow. If you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a like, and also consider subscribing if you want to see more content like this. My name is Glitch, and I do hope I'll see you next time for the next episode of Deja Vu Survival. Thanks for watching.